Hey there, cultural bridging superstar. Just want to give you a little welcome to the video here. It's a long one. I really appreciate your willingness to show up and see what this call was all about. We went 3 hours with this one, and I trimmed out some of the intro stuff where I was describing the software and how to get people on board. But then we get into it, and I welcome you to really stick with the call. And about halfway through, I start making some listing off some of the things that I've learned from other projects outside of this conversation and information that I've been gathering. So, about halfway through the conversation, you'll find a list of what other projects are doing and ideas that have come through from people that signed up for the call. So, yeah, there's really juicy moments there, and just overall. I welcome you to watch this with a pen in hand and take some notes, and not just to consume it as ideas, but really as a roadmap, some stuff you can do to be a cultural bridge and to make the world better around you. So that's what I got for you. Thanks for showing up and enjoy the call.
Okay, so I'm going to speak in English for the rest of this. Rondo, also include in your notes to new people how to connect to Wordly so that I don't have to keep saying that and they'll understand me as I continue in English.
Sure.
Awesome. So obviously with an application like this, any kind of software, please forgive any imperfections. We will later have all of these editations cleaned up and available in a subtitled replay. But for now, if anything that you read seems strange or like direct in a way that could be offensive, please assume the best. We're all coming here with the best intentions. And if we get into an emotional moment and someone says something, you're like, wow, I can't believe they said that. It's probably because it got translated a little weird. Okay, so that's just a little point I want to throw in there. This is going to be a long conversation and we might get to some deep points. And I want us to all just assume the best of our intentions of being here and sharing. If you need help with the translations, Rondel, you can see his name there, MX Rondel S. You can either text, you can chat to the whole chat and he will catch that, or you can contact him directly and just ask for some help with that. He's our tech friend. And Rondel is also a dear friend of the regenerative movement in Costa Rica. He is a cultural bridge. He is at the center of many wonderful, the center and periphery of several wonderful movements here, and someone I'm super grateful to call friend and grateful to have shown up to this call to offer his support to everyone. So really, I just want to recognize Randall with high importance and gratitude.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you too for all your work.
There are a number of items that I want to attend to before we jump into conversation. Some kind of a guide of the flow of the call, as well as some guidelines for the call. Briefly, to give you an idea of how this call is going to go, first, we're going to, after I describe the guidelines, we're going to drop into what is neo-colonialism. It's a heated word for many people, and it often is seen as a thing or something that people do. And really, I'd like to bring in what it is as a mindset that probably everyone on this call to some degree or another has exhibited in their life. Try to keep your shares directed at your personal experiences with cultural bridging, ideas for how cultural bridging can be practiced, or invitations to collaborate on projects. We all kind of know the problem already. And if someone voices something in a way that you think they're not going to understand, or they don't understand what you understand, and you would like to add to their understanding, then present it in that way, rather than you don't get it, this is a problem, you're part of the problem. We don't want to go there. So that is something that I would like to just have as a guideline when we phrase our shares and our feedback with people's share. I'll also mention I am speaking very slowly and clearly, and that's for a purpose, because we're working with this translation software, and people who might even be bilingual and want to just understand you. So for the sake of the software and anyone on the call, and for your emotions while you're speaking and your ability to think clearly when you're speaking and not be reactionary, please let's keep our speaking to a slow, clear enunciation of words so that we can get the best understanding for everyone. While this is a group discussion, we will want to keep our time most effectively used. So we're going to limit debates over what's right or wrong. It's kind of a restatement of what I said. We can comment on each other's things, but let's keep adding to it. There's a thing in improv called yes and. So let's keep that in mind as we respond to each other. The idea is like, oh, that's a good idea, and this. Okay, that'll keep things working progressively. And if you think an idea just won't work, you're like, oh, I thought of that. That won't work. Let's try to phrase it in a way that would make the idea better. Like, ooh, I can imagine that would work better if is a better way to keep the conversation rolling. To ensure that we hear from as many people as possible, I may interrupt you. That is my job as a moderator here. I may just be like, ask you to bring it around, rephrase it into a question or a simple statement. And I have a tendency to ramble. I know I like to just talk. And so I will be identifying that with a little timer. And if we get into longer than a 5-minute share at a time, I'm going to step in. And actually, I have a timer app here. I'm going to put the timer app up once we get rolling so that you can have a visual on my screen as to when your 5 minutes is up. And you can choose to speak more than once. Just maybe give somebody else a chance to chime in. There's going to be hands raised. Just being mindful to not dominate the conversation. Other than that, yeah, I don't really have major plans for this conversation. I am interested to see what brilliance comes from you all. So to let you know, for anyone who wants to leave the call at any point, the replays will be available. The translated replays are going to take a little time because we're going to get that, like with captions, and we have to get those edited. So whether you requested to receive email notifications from Regeneration Nation Costa Rica or not, I will at least be reaching out to you when the translated version of this is available with subtitles embedded in the video. Okay. So now we have this moment where we're beginning, and if there is anyone who has not gotten who is confused about getting the translations or has not gotten the note about changing your name, please say notes in the chat and Rondell will get them to you. Y hola a todos que están llegando. Hice unas notas sobre cómo usar la aplicación de Wordly para las traducciones y cómo poner una nota por su nombre para identificar la idioma que están hablando, que puedo cambiar la elección de idiomas para que la aplicación se traduzca mejor. Entonces, si no tienes estas notas, no sabe cómo hacerlo, pongas en el chat la palabra notas. Si pongas notas en el chat, el amigo Randall va a mandarte las notas que puede usar la aplicación y todo eso. Okay, so in the chat now, I would like to hear from everyone here. What do you think neo-colonialism is to you? What is neo-colonialism to you? Let's just get that out so that we have a clear indication as to where this is coming from for people. I personally find neo-colonialism to be a mindset of arriving to a place where other people have been living for a long time and doing your own thing, or that person doing their own thing, without connection with the people who have been there. As a result, colonialism indicates acquisition of land and other resources without the permission or connection with other people in that area. That used to be more commonly done with guns and swords. Nowadays, however, we recognize that it is being done with money and other influential opportunities. I've found that people talking about neo-colonialism sometimes are talking about the effects of it without really considering its root. And so blame is being put for the person contributing to that effect. But it is not being honored why that's happening. As many of us know, sometimes we come in and do our own thing and don't talk to our neighbors in this country, for instance, simply because we don't know the language and we're shy. And that is a valid excuse to a point, but when we enable ourselves with that, and we don't make the effort to find a translator to connect with the people whose village we just come to occupy, or sign up for weekly language classes immediately and commit to them as a necessity of living, then that excuse loses validity after a short period of time. And so what's so bad about acquiring resources if you have the resources to do that, acquiring land and acquiring resources? There is nothing inherently bad about finding someone who wants to sell the deed to a property and purchasing it. Whether that person is from that country or not, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. However, when there's lack of connection, lack of conversation, and when we don't practice one of the four permaculture principles of fair share and we start pulling water or electricity or using the road too much, more than others, and we're not really connecting with the people who fix the roads or improve the water system to accommodate our new population. And I'm speaking oftentimes in reference to large developments in Costa Rica, and you'll have to excuse me for that. This conversation does not have to revolve around that aspect of neocolonialism. It's one that has brought this conversation to light. I had an event called the Regenerative Business Incubator for Landowners. And we had 20 some landowners talking together, and other people that don't own land, but who work in that realm, having this conversation. And several of them were Costa Ricans, and they even brought to the light the habits of neocolonialism in Costa Ricans that live here in this country. They have the mindset too of doing whatever they want without considering the effect it has on the world around them. So this isn't to speak only to, say, North American landowners who are building an eco-village in Costa Rica that's not doing its share, right? That image, that stereotype gets pinned to this conversation here a lot. But I really want to open our minds before we start talking that this is happening all over the world by people from other places and even people from that same country. So that is my kind of first talks on neocolonialism here. Rondel, did you see any other pieces that came through on that topic? Any other shares that you'd like to read off?
Yes, there were just a few comments on the chat. Like from Santi, as he says, it's a new way of imposing culture and traditions, creating power dynamics, discrimination, and acculturation. That's one share from Santi. And Michael and Erin, they write continued erasure of native cultures with your presence. Those are two contributions. And then let me see, I get this from so many messages here and that I also sent out. Yeah, those are the ones I see right now.
Okay, great, thanks. And Rondel, for the sake of the translations, I know there are more than half of the people, the majority of the people here speak English, but there are many Latinos also. So Rondel, would you like to commit to speaking in English or Espanol?
Yeah, I suppose it would be easier because maybe not so many people may have opened up the Wordly tool, but we could be giving it a try too. If people, let's say, they give an okay if they want to hear Spanish more, perhaps a thumbs up on the screen or something could help if they'd rather hear Spanish or English.
Okay. Well, I'll let you figure that out. And if you start speaking in Spanish, I'll pick it up. Just stay consistent with what you choose. Okay. Thanks.
Sounds good.
All right. It's time for a raised hand. Who would like to share something? I see Susana with her hand in the top. Please share, Susana. And you can unmute yourself, Susana. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I speak English, but I will do it in Spanish. It's going to be easy. Okay. Alguien mencionó algo que para mí es sumamente importante. Además del neocolonialismo relacionado a la posesión de tierras, manejo de aguas, agricultura, etc., que es el neocolonialismo cultural. Yo soy uruguaya, soy hija de una uruguaya y de un polaco alemán. Conozco varios países de América Latina y creo que estoy en la posición de señalar que no he constatado mayor neocolonialismo cultural en ningún otro país de América Latina como en Costa Rica. Se está transformando en un tema crucial, creo que está en la base de todo esto, que es la falta de comunicación entre las personas, la enorme cantidad de personas que han venido a vivir a este país y que se han establecido y que no hablan el idioma. Yo estoy viviendo en la zona de Pérez Celedón, estoy dando clases de español a la mayoría de la colectividad americano-canadiense. Y puedo asegurar de que el 95% de las personas que están establecidas acá y que hace incluso hasta 10, 15, 20 años que están viviendo acá, no hablan el español. ¿Ah? O sea, acá hay un problema de mentalidad que va a ser muy difícil cambiarla, a no ser que el mismo país desarrolle una política de favorecer a las personas que hablan el idioma nativo en los beneficios para radicarse y todo eso, como pasa en muchos países de Europa, ¿ah? Que hay una exigencia para obtener la residencia de hablar el idioma. Esto puede sonar muy antipático, no es mi intención, pero es una realidad. Es una realidad que hace que haya colectividades que estén totalmente aisladas. Por ejemplo, acá se está comenzando un problema con una colectividad que está ubicada en Chirripó, ¿no? Que hasta se están autoaislando. Y tienen actitudes de autoaislamiento en relación a lo que hacen, en relación a las cosas que convocan, incluso hasta rechazan la intervención de locales en la economía del lugar. Se está generando un problema muy serio, es una colectividad muy grande, ¿verdad? Que además está desarrollando actividades libremente, lo cual me parece bien, pero casi que está al límite de la ilegalidad, porque yo no sé cuántas de estas personas tienen una residencia con permiso para trabajar. No es mi problema ese, no quiero ahondar en eso, pero sí creo que hay un neocolonialismo cultural que se está dando en el país, que incluso llama la atención a gente europea que viene al país. ¿Cómo es posible que siempre haya disposición hacia el inglés y no haya disposición hacia el español? Es un tema de los nacionales del país, es un tema de la política educacional, ¿verdad? Que incluso me parece perfecto que se quiera poner el inglés como materia obligatoria en primaria, pero se debería poner también más énfasis en la enseñanza en las escuelas costarricenses del español, para que se tenga un mejor español, ¿verdad? Eso facilita aprender otro idioma, y que en el país se desarrolle, se creen más instituciones que promuevan la enseñanza del idioma. Creo que tiene que haber una política nacional de defensa del idioma nativo. No es posible, ¿verdad?, que haya demasiada facilidad con el tema del inglés, ¿verdad? En mi país, que es Uruguay, ya digo, yo estoy muy cerca de las colectividades alemana y polaca, todo el mundo habla español, los extranjeros hablan español. Lo mismo sucede en Argentina, lo mismo sucede en Chile. Yo puedo hablar más que nada sobre el Cono Sur, ¿ah? Y en el resto de los países también. O sea que ese es un problema que hay que enfocarlo. Y creo que también tiene que haber una actitud distinta, ¿verdad?, de la gente que viene al país. Pero, por supuesto, que tiene que partir de los nacionales. Si en el propio país no se hace nada para defender la cultura, que se empieza por el idioma, que es básico, bueno, no sé. Pero a mí me preocupa. ¿verdad? Me da pena porque además las personas de habla inglesa la están pasando mal, sufren abusos porque no se pueden comunicar bien, ¿verdad? Están de alguna manera los colocan en una situación de vulnerabilidad frente a los abusos, que los hay y muchos, lamentablemente. Entonces es a dos puntas el tema, que creo que es serio y que tiene que ser abordado. Yo de mi parte estoy haciendo un pequeño grano de arena, ¿verdad?, en la comunidad, enseñando español. Por supuesto que también es una entrada económica para mí, pero no lo hago por eso, realmente. Yo soy retirada, no preciso, por suerte, de eso. Lo hago porque mi tiempo vale, ¿verdad? Pero creo que es un tema a abordar. Muy, muy importante. Nada más. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Susana.
No, gracias.
Yeah, the biggest thing I took there is the idea of creating a national campaign to encourage it. Have that be part of the Arrival to Costa Rica campaign. Put it in the airports, right?
Yeah.
All right. And Suzanne, I would love to touch base with you after today's call about your services. Many people are asking for a good teacher. Okay. Is anyone else like to add to the conversation? Raise your hand with the gestures feature.
I can jump in and share.
Okay.
I'll share in English, si eres todo bien. I'm in Nicaragua right now, and I've been traveling for 10 years. And as a traveler, we know how much we love to go to these different places and be a part of different cultures, while at the same time having all the things that we love of our own culture, whether it's food or AC or amenities or flushing toilets or all of those components. And I think, as what was shared by Susanna, language is a huge component of that. Even just starting with learning a couple of the basic words, I think, goes so far for being able to connect with the local people. And I know for me, I've been able to foster great relationships with the locals here in Nicaragua, and when I travel around Central America, because I've been able to pick up Spanish over the years. And for me, a lot of this conversation, it is communication. These are things that come back to communication and widening the circle so that we can include communication and input from other people. And with that, you have to start with the local language. I think that's one of the biggest signs of respect and humbleness, to go into a new place, to at least learn some of the language. And I think, as was hinting to, the national campaign of, if you're looking for residency in a country, it should include a mandatory year of classes for that language. And ideally, that would also include some indigenous languages, even for local nationals in Costa Rica, learning some breviary or learning some of these other indigenous languages. I'm from Canada. I hardly know any words in the local indigenous languages, of which there's many. And I think that's why I appreciate this conversation going beyond tourists and kind of Europeans or Westerners going into Costa Rica or Central America, is that this is a thing. I'm still considered a settler in Canada. My family is 4th generation in Canada, and the indigenous people there consider me a settler, someone who's continuing the trend of colonization. So this is an ingrained thing and a conversation that encircles everything. And as I shared in the chat, I went to a town, a suburb in BC, and I was asking for help, and no one spoke English. They only spoke Mandarin. And I couldn't believe that I was in my own country and I couldn't communicate and speak with anyone, because there had been such an influx from people from Hong Kong coming in, buying up. And it was the first time I got my own taste of colonization, or this sense of like someone else kind of coming into my own country And that for me was a big eye opener of trying to be humble into what it's like for me going into these other places. So with some of our initiatives that we've done with Momentum Collective, where we do artist residencies and bringing people in and encouraging arts and sharing, we have a social circus program of which how can we integrate local initiatives and especially with kids and having them have fun, because something that we've learned is that trying to open up and share with local people. We've done events and experiences in Guatemala, Indonesia, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. You can't assume that what you want to do is something the locals want to do. We keep inviting them to come. We'll offer you free classes or free yoga or capoeira or any of these other things. And that's not really a thing for them. What we found that works is asking, okay, what do you want to do and what can we help facilitate for you? And suddenly, yeah, more salsa classes is coming up, doing like piñata stuff, or we've even had beach cleanups and other kind of components like that. So I think the ability to listen and again, speaking the language goes really, really far. Because sometimes, as much as I love yoga and think it's good for the world, I can't just push that agenda on other people, because I think that's a big part of the thing, thinking that we know better than what the local culture is. So there's got to be a lot of patience and sitting with the different ideologies of things. So I'll maybe leave it at that for now, but thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you. I think I saw Santi has his hand open.
Hey, this might sound right. I'm just trying a new mic, so. Yeah, you hear me?
Sounds good.
Yeah, good. All right. I think what John was just saying, I agree. When I see foreigners, but mostly English speakers that come, and I think they think it's a really good idea and really inclusive to keep inviting locals to their events. And what I always say is it easier for a foreigner to go to a bingo or a 15 años or even to church with locals, or is it easier for a campesino to go to an ecstatic dance? And I think it's about being aware of the power dynamics and how intimidating it can be for a local that has never traveled abroad, that has mostly stayed maybe in their own little town, to be invited to a place where there's going to be 10 different nationalities, mostly speaking English, with great English. And while their English is not good, and sometimes they're even intimidated about their Spanish in case of Spanish speakers. So I just encourage foreigners, even English speakers or whatever other language, is to just participate on what the locals are already doing, not even creating what the locals told you they want, but just going to the things they already have in place. Again, their 15 años, their weekend asado, going to church activities, whatever that you can connect and understand the culture and understand what's going on there before starting to create new ideas, because there's things that are already moving, and instead of creating something from scratch, like a new thing that I can put my name on, why not join in something that the locals are already doing in their language with their culture?
Mhm.
Wow, Santi, that's hot. Thank you. Let's see, was that Fish? You had your hand raised, or was that just something different?
I was just clapping. Appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else like to come into the conversation? Randall. You're muted, Randall.
Ok. Sí, voy a hablar en español para aclararte, Jason, y a todos, todas. Sí, me encantan los aportes que han hecho y muy de acuerdo en cómo nos mezclamos con la cultura local. Creo que son muy buenas recomendaciones las de Santi, de entender qué es lo que pasa y pasaba ahí antes de que llegáramos. Inclusive yo también, que yo soy nuevo aquí en Pérez Celedón. Antes yo no vivía en Pérez Celedón, antes vivía en Heredia y San José casi toda mi vida. Ahora vengo acá a una zona mucho más rural y la cultura es un poco diferente hasta para mí, lo cual me gusta, me llama la atención. Cosas que antes, bueno, sí había participado hace mucho tiempo en cosas como topes de caballos, desfiles. Ahora llego acá y me siento más cercano a estas tradiciones y voy a estas carreras de cintas de caballos y al bingo y estar en la plaza. Entonces, sí, claro, para mí es muy fácil y me siento muy bien recibido aquí por los locales. Y varios de mis amigos y amigas extranjeras me acompañan también. Es muy bonito sentirse conectado e invitado. Aquí son muy amigables los locales. Algo que yo quería reflexionar también y que me llega en este momento también, en parte de la cultura del tico, como tal vez algo como hemos sido culturizados, ¿verdad? Que es esta forma de servicio, o a veces yo siento que es un propósito. Yo soy una persona que me siento siempre muy servicial. Entonces, cuando uno pone esta postura de ser servicial, busca cómo hacerlo más agradable para la otra persona, cómo hacerlo más fácil. Entonces, por ejemplo, eso es algo que yo he cambiado un poco en mi interacción con los extranjeros, extranjeras, donde les hablo en español. Tal vez antes lo hacía menos, inclusive. Antes, sabiendo que se les hace más fácil hablarme en inglés y yo considero que hablo muy buen inglés, entonces voy a hablarles en inglés porque les quiero hacer las cosas más fáciles. Pero hace un tiempo para acá he cambiado mi postura y ahora quiero ayudarles a que se conecten aquí con la cultura local. Entonces ahora he cambiado. Ahora en esta llamada casi lo hice al revés y dije que iba a hablar en inglés, ¿verdad? Entonces no, me parece que les ayudo más hablándoles en español y esa es mi postura ahora. Espero que les ayude y en cualquier momento estoy disponible para traducirles y ayudarles cualquier cosa que no entiendan. Quería compartir eso.
Pura vida. Gracias, Randall. Daniela.
Hello, Jason. I've been following you in several of your offerings lately. Well, I want to mention something when I heard Santi talking about the dynamics. What I heard is there are already dynamics happening in the place. So thinking it from a regenerative perspective, there's an evolution. There are complex dynamics happening all around us, and there's like a natural evolution of that. And there's also potential in the place, the potential that local community is not longer as it used to be, because there's foreign people now coming, are attracted to this place. And I totally believe that things happen for a reason. So they're being attracted here for a reason. And I really like the perspective of focusing on the potential of that instead of the problem that we are generating. So the potential of that can be like a lot of things, right? But when Santi was saying that there are already dynamics happening, like the 15 años, the different ways that they celebrate or that they want to do things, I really love it because it's kind of seeing what's happening in the place, like what are all the pieces that are there, and what can we co-create together? Because it's not imposing either of those. Like, we don't want to like become ticos now and like start talking in well, I'm Mexican, I can also speak Spanish, but I don't feel like either I have to adapt to that or they have to adapt to me, but what can we co-create together? And also, this is a topic that is worldwide problem when foreigners come to another place. But I feel like Costa Rica can be an example of that weaving, of that collaboration, of how we take things to another level. And there are ways for doing that, like with the structure, with teams working on like steps and like envisioning what can we create with the potential of the place. And yes, like I also believe that Spanish is one of the tools. Learning Spanish, also learning English, because that opens possibilities for ticos to open the possibility to get more information, to have different experiences, to grow in general, as well as English talkers or speakers learning Spanish. That opens the possibility. And also, if you learn any language, you open yourself like a lot of possibilities. So I just wanted to add that, like, focusing on the potential and how we can evolve together. Not thinking it from an static way that we need to conserve or preserve the culture of ticos as it is, like in a museum.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'll say that it's inevitable that we're in this country and many others living in a new culture, a new international culture. And at the same time, like with what Santi brought up and many of the conversations I've had with other people in the country, is that it's not so much about, it's really actually not about trying to make either culture more like the other. It's more that for that new culture to arrive, we need to start hanging out more. And the way to do that is to tap into what exists. And what exists right now is a dichotomy, a polar kind of biculture situation in many cases, where there's this like progressive international culture, and then there's the conservative, local culture. But, another point I would like to bring up is that this cultural bridging piece is, I think, as much as it's about the language barrier, there's also this just progressiveness versus conservative barrier. This exists in any given country. I know many of the friends who I've talked to, the Tico friends I've talked to, have said that many of the ideas they're sharing with me are things they've thought about in their own efforts to bridge the gap between their progressive Tico culture, and that incidentally often hangs out with a lot of foreigners in many cases, with the more conservative Tico culture. And that is something that in one of my conversations, particularly, I think it was with Diana Chavez, she was saying that it's important to know when we're in this country that there are many Costa Rican cultures. that when you are in Pérez Celedón here, you're in a different culture than if you were, say, in Jaco or Nosara.
Mhm.
And the Caribbean is an entirely different culture. And there is a difference in how we're going to relate. Like I learned how to speak a more informal Vos form of Spanish as I was learning and improving my Spanish. And now I have to train myself to not use that when I'm in town or even talking to my neighbors here, because I'm starting to note that they even talk to their children in the formal tone within this bubble of the culture. And that is not just with language, but other practices. So we really are in a very multicultural situation. And the way to make those bridges isn't to necessarily conform to one or another, but is to understand the differences so that we can respect them when in their presence. And that's where the doors open and the bridges get built.
And also, what can we learn from them, right? From that conservative perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Someone else want to speak? Okay, Roberto.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to add on to what Daniela just said. So one of the things is this kind of humility versus kind of arrogance that I've experienced. A lot of us who come from other places into Costa Rica, and not just Costa Rica, like Jason said, like we think we're God's gift to the old ways, right? Like I've seen this in Hawaii and it's broken my heart, and in other Latin American countries. And like we, especially the hippie kind of progressive new agey part of us, we're into like bringing new culture, right? The new way of doing things. And I think the arrogance there in the people I love, right, including me, right, coming with this idea that we're going to bring some new culture when the culture we come from, like at least in the US, is so broken in so many different ways. And we're thinking we're going to enlighten these people with our new way of being. And like, what if we decided, oh, these conservative people, they know how to live together. They know how to be family. Their extended families are more functional than our kind of individualized, kind of independent streak, autonomous. So just like this idea of what can we learn from conservative peoples. Yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks for the attention.
Yeah, the savior complex, right? That's pretty easy one to fall into whenever we learn about new dietary options or anything. You know, we feel like we've got the way, and then we start proselytizing. Yeah, definitely something worth correcting in our patterns all around. Anyone else like to share something?
Teon's got his hand raised.
Okay. Yep.
Hi there. Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Great.
Yes,
I'm not
clearly.
even knowing exactly what I want to say, but maybe there's also like a certain like question in my share. First of all, like love all the things that have been shared so far, and I think amongst all of us here, like we already doing those kind of things, I guess, like blending in with the locals, going to the bingo, learning the language, learning Spanish in my case. The thing that I've found tough and that I found challenging is I've been living for 9 months now in the Machuca Valley here in Costa Rica. There's a few like big communities been built or are in construction now, so to say. And yeah, I see a lot of like the old, so to say, happening there. And maybe my question, or maybe my concern here is like, while us brave souls trying to, with our very best we can, building those bridges, at the same time, if I look to my right, I see that there's, from a way bigger force, an even bigger gap that is created. So how can I do both? So how can I be from my own little tiny island successful in creating my own bridges, and at the same time addressing that right next door things are going very different, and there's a long way to learn, so to say, without, because that's maybe sometimes my tendency, without like speaking my radically truth or being like super direct as Dutch people can be, and then people feel offended, or they can't receive me, or they won't see that message or whatever. So I think I'm gonna end with that, and maybe it's not like the time yet to start a discussion, but I, for myself, for my own place, I'm just super curious how you guys deal with that in particular, knowing that we can't save the whole world and that we can't change everything, but how can we make impact within certain of these new age colonization projects from our perspective, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think I understand your question, but can you go ahead and just restate it as a clear question to the group?
Yeah, I'm trying my best. Yeah, so what can we do while witnessing projects that are like not helping to create bridges but making the gap bigger? What can we do there? How can we be impactful? So aside from our like personal actions that we can do to, for example, go to a bingo, learn the language, invite a Tico neighbor to come over for dinner, what can we do on maybe a bit of like a bigger scale? Does that make sense, what I'm trying to address?
Yeah, that's more clear. Thanks.
Thank you.
So what I hear you asking is, when we see the problem, when we see projects that are not building bridges, and quite the opposite sometimes, how do we approach them to encourage them to do differently? Is that essentially the...
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody? Oh, Santi has something for that. Go ahead, Santi.
Yeah, so when we were in high school with my sister, I remember there was the bullies and people that maybe would eat really unhealthy, and we started talking about this concept of like positive peer pressure. So we would take a bully, we would invite him or her to something, and we would make sure to bring like super compassionate, empathetic people to that group. And so normally in their group, they would be just bullying each other. But when they would come with us, they would see an example of how to do things differently. And suddenly the peer pressure was to not be a bully, but to be nice to others. And because of like social norms or whatever, they would end up getting the best out of them in terms of interacting with others. The same way with food, we would bring someone that would normally be making fun of others, what they're eating, and they would be like super proud of just eating like fried and processed foods. And so we would invite them to some place that was healthy, and suddenly it didn't make sense to make fun of this, because everyone else around the person was eating in a way that maybe they had not explored or they didn't agree with. And we would try to do it as respectfully as possible and just like really smooth. But I think this is an opportunity especially for foreigners, when they see other foreigners coming in, to go get them and be like, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. You know, you should come to the feria with me. Because when they come here for the first time, they're kind of lost and they might not have a lot of friends, or they might not know a lot of places. And so you can show by example the things that you're doing. We as locals can also do it, but I think it's not our responsibility to teach people that in general, I would think, are more privileged if we already are struggling with a bunch of things. So when I can, I do it. But I think that's a great place to be, like the bridging of just making sure they come to the right place, connecting with locals, instead of letting them drift off to just foreigner bubbles where they're just isolated from what's happening around them in the country that they're coming to.
Thank you. Daniela.
So it's something similar to Santi's conversation. And when you asked that, I thought about potential again. So, and again, like the complex system. So, how can I say this in an easy way? When I see these developments, and I'm living in right now, we live in the same area. We were having a conversation last night. I see also the developments in terms of potential. And I see myself as someone that can take certain role that is aligned with my purpose in my soul. I can take that role and like take it to like, I don't know how to express it, like nail at it, or like ganar en ello, con ese rol, and bring more people, kind of impacting my family, and my family will impact other neighbors, other families, and those families will impact bigger groups, and it's kind of like a ripple effect. And it's an opportunity to start creating a culture, as Santi was saying, of inviting people, because monkeys see what monkeys do, what monkeys see. There's like that phrase, right? Something like that. And I really believe that that's the key, culture.
Thank you. Susanna, would you like to share?
Do you hear me well? Yeah. Okay. Ahora voy a hablar un poquito del otro lado, a cruzar el puente hacia el otro lado. Yo soy uruguaya. Recalco esto porque yo me siento exactamente en la mitad del puente, porque estoy a mitad de camino de la cultura latinoamericana y a mitad de camino de la otra cultura, porque, bueno, estoy muy cercana de la colectividad de extranjeros. Además, soy hija de un extranjero, yo me considero ciudadana del mundo. Entonces, los temas interculturales para mí son conocidos. Entonces, voy a tratar ahora de ver otro punto de vista, que, digamos, si bien está la barrera del idioma, también a veces están las barreras de las costumbres, o de las mentalidades, o del modo de enfocar las cosas. Hay algo que puede sonar como una pequeñez, pero no lo es tanto. Yo comparto algunas quejas de la colectividad de extranjeros, vamos a decir angloparlantes, de las costumbres de acá del país que nos cuestan mucho. Una de ellas es la famosa impuntualidad tica. Es algo que parece una tontera, pero no, sabes que es puede llegar a resultar sumamente ofensivo el hecho que no se respete cuando uno tiene una cita o contrató a alguien para un trabajo o por lo que fuera, que quedó a determinada hora y se aparezca media hora más tarde o una hora más tarde, o no se presente y no avise, no tenga esa costumbre. Esas son cosas que realmente molestan muchísimo. Lo digo no de punto de vista personal, porque lo he compartido, lo comparto con amigos americanos y amigos canadienses. Eso genera un encono contra la cultura, ¿verdad? Estoy poniendo un ejemplo, ¿verdad? Pero genera molestia, entonces eso genera también una especie de encono contra la adaptación a la costumbre. Eso no se adaptan a ese tipo de cosas, cuesta mucho porque además los resultados son negativos. No es que, bueno, no vino, no avisó, se presentó una hora más tarde y no pasó nada. Sí, pasa. Pasa que un trabajo no se cumple, pasa que se complicó todo el día, la programación del día de uno. Sí, pasan cosas, no es pura vida. No es pura vida, ahí hay todo un tema con el famoso pura vida, que yo creo que tiene muchas connotaciones negativas, ¿tá? Y que no es pura vida, pura fiesta, no. Digamos, a veces el pura vida trae complicaciones personales, complicaciones en el desarrollo de un proyecto, porque esto lo estoy hablando de una cosa pequeña, una cita, pero a eso pasa a veces en macro cosas que no se cumplen con los plazos que se acordaron para cumplir un proyecto, para cumplir un trabajo, y eso trae complicaciones y disgustos. Entonces yo creo como que, bueno, de ambas partes hay que hacer un esfuerzo, y a veces no tomar a mal el adoptar, así como acá también, digamos, hay que adoptar las costumbres, ¿verdad? De las comidas, de los encuentros sociales y todo eso es bueno unirse. También es de la otra parte, como es tan grande la colectividad, por algo estamos reunidos, esto es algo que preocupa, ¿verdad? No es que estamos hablando de una excentricidad, es una realidad del país, la cantidad de migración extranjera que hay. Entonces, yo creo que también de la otra parte, de la parte del país, digamos, no estaría mal discutir algunas de este tipo de cosas, como para, digamos, también modificar conductas, porque si no se modifican conductas, hay puntos de desencuentro. Eso es lo que quería decir. Hay puntos de desencuentro por maneras de ver las cosas, ¿verdad? Culturales. Pero cuando un país está recibiendo tanta migración, inmigración de alta calidad, porque en general, ¿verdad? Acá la gente que viene tiene una buena educación, aporta económicamente, eso es una realidad, ¿verdad? O sea que no es esa migración que complica tema aparte, ¿verdad? Que lamentablemente la hay alrededor del mundo, esa gente desesperada por trabajo, que tiene hambre, que no tiene con qué darle de comer a sus hijos. Acá es un privilegio la migración que está recibiendo Costa Rica.
Susana.
Un gran privilegio. Entonces, digamos...
Susana, disculpe,
Sí.
los 5 minutos se pasó. Solo
He
para...
dicho lo fundamental.
Ajá.
Era eso, para reflexionar. Gracias.
Thank you. Okay, so I see 3 hands up. Randall, did you see who's came up first?
No, not really. When I
Okay,
saw both
well, we
were
haven't
up.
heard from John early yet, so let's go ahead and, oh, we did hear from John. Well, anyhow, we'll get to everybody. Thanks, John. Go ahead and jump in.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I'm just off to the beach for a birthday gathering. Don't mind all the face paint. For me, an example that we've had before of how to work with our social circus, which has been one of our initiatives. An example being on Ometepe Island in Nicaragua, which is a very traditional, old, and very rural and poor community for the most part. We thought we would have free classes for kids to come practice circus things, and it would be fun and open. The first few weeks that we did it, it was mainly expat kids coming down. So we had to go, okay, this is further dividing things as to what the initial question was. And so we had to go, okay, how can we encourage this so that we can make this more accessible for local kids and involve people, the locals, to come in. And so we asked around, and I think that's a big part of things, being able to reflect and ask and get feedback for how you can improve things. The feedback was most of the kids live further away. They don't have transportation, and their kids don't have money or initiative to really drop them off. So we're like, okay, we'll pick up the kids. So we organize these school buses or these back, pickup trucks to bring kids in, and they could have this free thing. We'd offer some food and some fruit and some drinks, and it ended up taking off incredibly. And the parents loved it, Nicaragua style. They're like, if you want to take care of our kids, here you go for it. It's totally different than Western culture. And we would also have it facilitated by a Spanish speaker with some of our expat helpers. So that helped big time as well for reassurance and trust and language, ensuring that there. So these are the types of things that we found of trying to, how can we listen and get reflections to come back in and make things more accessible. And that often means having to go out of our own way for these initiatives, rather than assuming that if you hold it, they will come and that people will come in. And a lot of our events being hosted bilingually has been a big help as well. We often try and have a local price point and a more traditional price point for running events, and I think that can also be a tricky thing. I'd love to hear from people on if offering a local price point is it beneficial, or does that cause more separation and conflict of encouraging two pricing? So that would be my follow-up for how people sit with that.
Great, that's a good question. Santi, you've got your hand up. You want to chime in?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with this one that John was mentioning. And what I've seen more than the price point in terms of activities is when foreigners with they make more money in their jobs come to countries that wages are really low and they start paying more. For me, this one is already obvious, but maybe for some could be some new information. If they start paying more, but there's not better education and better social security, whatever services that benefit the whole town, one worker or 5 workers making more money is just going to maybe increase some of the problems unless they get better education. So for me, maybe more than lowering prices or paying more for the workers is how can you help local initiatives that benefit the broader population, that you're going to improve the well-being and the lifestyle of the whole town, and not just $200 or $400 more on a paycheck for a specific person. The next thing is when we were talking about the bridging on helping new foreigners get to know the local culture, one thing that I find very useful, either for locals or for foreigners, is to show them, but it's not just to say like, oh, look, you can go to this bingo, you can go to this farmer's market. It's like holding hands. I think that's super important when you're showing someone something new, to just hold hands for long enough that they feel comfortable and safe doing it on their own. If I invite someone to the bingo, go with them. If you want to teach them Spanish, maybe join them in a few Spanish classes and help bridge that first steps of frustration. And I think that's one of the best ways of helping people feel comfortable in a new environment with new knowledge, and also feel welcome and included, which eventually I think is going to help my first example to improve the whole local area more in an homogeneous way, and the second to get long-lasting results and not just like a few like moments of let's call it impulsivity when the person went to the Spanish class, but then maybe they quit because it was too frustrating or too difficult.
Thanks, Santi. Yeah, that's such good advice too. Sometimes we give advice and then we're not only don't hold the hand, but we're not even maybe practicing it ourselves. Roberto.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I want to acknowledge the folks who have come before and really appreciate the wisdom and thoughtfulness. I want to get back to Tim's question. I think individuals helping individuals is beautiful. And I think there's also an assumption of willingness of people to be saying yes to, like, hey, yeah, hold my hand, please, and take me to this thing. And I think we're not talking about the comfort and power of privilege to say no and to resist change. Like, I won't change if I don't have to. And I heard I don't know if I'm pronouncing Tim's name correctly, but I heard a little bit of that. Like, what do we do with people who are taking on a completely different neo-colonialist attitude and don't want to come along? Like, there's a sense in this conversation that we're kind of preaching to the choir. And I really appreciate Tim's question, because it's like, what do we do when we don't have people who are happily coming along? But like, say, hey, learn Spanish. And like, yeah, I should learn Spanish. Could you hold my hand? I'll go learn Spanish with you. And I think I would love to hear more analysis or suggestions when we're crossing this power divide that exists, when people are not interested in the goodies that we're promising. And I think I want to say that we can't be bridges to everyone. We can be bridge to the people who feel like they can connect with us. And those people can be bridges to other people, right? And this is along the willingness game. And I think we need other strategies for when a community project is totally antithetical to our bridge building program. And what do we do then? I'm just offering that question. Thank you.
Well, I think you answered your question at the same time you asked it. From my perspective here, the fact is, yeah, like this, doesn't matter what the cool thing is we think everybody should do. We don't have a chance of convincing them all to do it, right? And so therefore we can chat, we can put the feelers out there, we can bring up things, we can invite. But if people are just, there's too many people that do want to be led to waste time on those that don't, in my opinion. The more we can live by example, and like Santi said earlier, like the peer pressure, like bringing them to places where the example is being lived in an awesome way. Like, I think that's great. And if they just really don't want it after that, then they don't want it. See, Santi says, chatted in here, I think there's always going to be people not collaborating with locals and foreigners. We want to just they want to just do their own thing. I think we work consistently to join forces and slowly create the integration culture. Yeah, we just work with who we are and what we've got. And that peer pressure will eventually wear off on those that have fertile soil for it. I have a list of other ideas, lots of other ideas. And I would actually like to bring them to the conversation and try to stimulate this in some additional directions. Before I do, though, would anybody else like to comment on Roberto's question? No. Okay. I was going to offer a little break, but I think on a Zoom call, if you need to run off to the bathroom or get some water, just go for it. I don't think I need to make you guys all wait 5 minutes if we're ready to jump into something next. All right. So I want to read off some of the ideas that have come here, and I want to invite you guys to be ready to take some notes, because after I go through some of this stuff, I would like for there to be some feedback on it and some contributions or ideas. First, yeah, so I'm going to go a little slow and give you a chance to either write down on notes or throw something in the chat to share your thoughts on any given thing I share here. So first, I'm going to go through some of the responses. Many of you responded in Calendly to this question. Like, what do you think we could do, right? And some things came through, like mutual respect, inviting them to events, mediating sessions to air grievances. This was a good one. Can intentionally, when we hear, like I heard a neighbor here ask me, Jason, what do you think? You know, I'd earned trust. I'd been hanging out with him, talking with him, and he's a farmer here. He asked me, Jason, are they going to keep coming? Is it ever going to stop? Are the foreigners going to keep coming until there's no more room for us? Right? Now, this was a sincere question. And I've also heard some less soft and sincere questions, like people blaming, say, foreigners for doing something or some big project for overdeveloping in their area. And when these things happen and we hear about them, I think one of our responsibilities as a cultural bridge is to organize a conversation around it, like I'm doing here, right? But within your pueblo. So that's a great one. Mediated sessions to air the grievances. Rewriting policies, codes, and laws. You know, I just held a 7-day training on writing community living agreements, and this conversation came up as the 7th day's topic. And this is something that, you know, there are all of these little different ADIs, the different associations of development in the different villages. And even in other countries, if you live in a country where the cultural bridge isn't, you know, nation to nation, but you live like in a northern country or something where they have a town association, like going there and getting involved. And they do have written agreements around certain things. The enforcement isn't always so strong, but that's one way to like really like get involved with these organizations and offer policies changes, offer ideas, offer suggestions to co-create something. It's not generally a fast process, but it's one worth starting. This is kind of in what there's an organization called Fuerza de Amor out of a community called Brave Earth. I interviewed them on my podcast. I think it was like episode 7, and I'll be doing another one specifically with Elan from Fuerza de Amor to go deeper into that project. But that's like, look for examples of projects you know that are doing really good work. And like, think, could I do at least part of that where I live? Right? The idea of entrepreneurship training has come up. I think somebody mentioned it in this conversation, and it was brought up before. Like, we as people from a more progressive culture or affluent culture have training in building businesses and entrepreneurship, and using that, and it doesn't have to be that you're teaching everyone, but if you can put the word out in your village that you are willing to spend time with people sharing that education, it can go a long way in creating allies in the village, and help, like you said, not just help one person do something, but help the entire area. And when we can offer these entrepreneurship trainings or some other class where people can come together and learn some foundations of whether it's entrepreneurship or, you know, whether it's permaculture or some other, but, you know, looking at what they really want. If they're not looking for, you know, how to be organic because they already have a limiting belief that they'd never be able to continue feeding their family with organic, maybe that's not the place to start, but they might be more triggered by ideas for how to improve their financial situation. That could be a wonderful step in. That's something they want, and that comes with listening. So listen to what they want and try to offer to teach it. Reducing imports. This is a wonderful one. Buy local. Duh. Right? That should be top of the list. Create that circular economy with where we put our dollars right away. Or where we put our currency, our purchasing power. Someone said educating using AI to speed up the learning curve. I did it. I went into AI, I went to ChatGTP, and I said, you know, I started asking these questions about neo-colonialism and cultural bridging and even gentrification. So that could be another guide for you. Talked a lot about language. Curiosity and humility are vital. Like really being curious it's how the doors get open. Showing up to the bingo is a great example of just being humble and coming in to really make connection before influence. A lot of the stuff we already touched on. Offering bilingual events, and yeah, finding translators for bilingual events is something that, you know, if the event has enough meaning, shouldn't be terribly impossible to find some people willing to take turns doing that. Or you could fundraise for it. That's another option. Speaking to everyone's needs and desires, and this comes to listening again. It's like really understanding what are their needs and desires. Providing community service as a listening aid. Look, I just went to the Association of Development meeting here in Guadalupe, and just by my presence, I was asked to sit on the commission for the kitchen and to be, because they needed help. That was the thing. I listened to everything going on. The one thing that they just didn't have resolved was how to make the food scene better for the festival, the fundraiser. And so they, after no one had an answer, someone's like, we do have these foreign neighbors here that might be willing to contribute. And everyone looked at me. I was like, okay, hi, I'm the new guy. Yeah, I'm connected. I can ask for some support. And they put me on the commission. Now, I was first intimidated by this because I'm a health food nut. And I know they're going to be deep frying everything. But I sucked that up. I said, you know what? I'm not going to change everything. I'm not going to go in and be like, you can't deep fry anything. But by my presence and my humility and my willingness to serve the needs of my neighbors, while I may not change everything all at once, I will certainly have the opportunity to plant some seeds of ideas and influence in doing that without imposing my preference, right? Finding shared work, working with people. And this was kind of why I brought that up, was this idea of just being in the environment with people. Do something, just do something to hang out and help, whether it's shoveling rock to fix the road or pushing the shovel a little bit to build a new water trench, or whatever it is that you learn even if it's setting up for the bingo, volunteer to set up for the bingo, hang out with them. That's how you build trust, and you learn what's really important to them. And you have an opportunity to step through that. I'm curious at this point, I'm getting a lot of rain here. Can you guys still hear me clearly? Yeah, okay, great. Yes, it was said before, but I'll say it again. Letting go of the expectations that Ticos do things in the way that North Americans or foreigners are going to do. Let that go. We don't need to expect anybody to come to our side of the bridge. The key is to just start building bridges. Patronizing small local owned shops, or even, like when you learn that your neighbor is growing and selling food, like I love walking into the village and buying my eggs directly from my neighbor's house instead of relying on going to the farmer's market to get it. Once I learned who in my area is selling stuff, I just have these one-on-one visits to their house to get some things, and they love it. It's not a burden for them. I shoot them a text, they get it ready, and it helps them on market day, unless they're really busy and they don't like this. But if they like it, that's one less thing they have to take to the market hoping someone is going to buy from them. Okay, here's some in Spanish. Sharing resources. Do you have something that you don't use a lot that you could lend to your neighbors, like some good piece of equipment? Some valuable piece of equipment? I lend my electric chainsaw to my neighbors when I can. I'm not opening it to the whole village to come by and use my chainsaw, but like I had a moment where I hesitated and I was like, ooh, if they know I have this nice thing, then maybe I might get ripped off someday or whatever. Thought just passed through my head. But then I put that away. I was like, no way, I'm going to sit here and watch that guy swing his machete for 30 minutes to clean that branch when I could just lend him this thing for 3 minutes, right? So sharing resources in ways that make sense is a huge, huge thing that can cultivate a generosity, a gratitude. Okay, so those are some of the things that just came through from the attendance to the to this call here. Before I go into some of the things I talked with in my prior interviews, does anybody have anything they would like to share on what I've mentioned already? You can raise your hand. No? Okay. And I'll just carry on with some more ideas here and share it up. Hopefully you're getting some inspiration. I'm not reading down the whole list. Like I said, a lot of things. I will read down some of these lists. These are a little bit more specific to people that these are what things said by landowners or community developers here in Costa Rica that are already doing things. All right. I asked them, what are you doing that's working? So I'm going to just read these off. We created an employment association to rotate employees. That's interesting. Instead of just being like, I'm only going to hire these 3 or 4 guys as my crew, they created an association of trusted people that they fairly rotate. And they found that was beneficial in their program, and they continued doing it. Santi, I'll let you chime in. Go ahead.
So I think because sometimes, and I would say this even for men more than just foreigners, it's easy for us, at least in my experience, to talk and to give our opinion. And so I think something important, and I have it right here, it's to just look around and see who's not talking and bringing them into the conversation. And right now, I would really like to hear from Stephanie, from Marta, from Joy, from Gianni, because I'm sure they've had nice experiences. They might have questions. When we're in meetings with foreigners and locals, whoever's not talking, if they feel comfortable, how can we bring them into the conversation? Either during, but I know that something can make someone anxious. But if not, afterwards, just ask them what they think and bring that voice in some way to the conversation, so everyone's needs and feelings are being taken into account.
I can pipe in. I just want to say, I'm sorry, because just as the meeting was starting, friends dropped by and I missed most of the call, so I can't even relate to the context, but I will definitely listen to the recording and maybe some of the other people can share their thoughts now, but sorry.
Well, I can say something. I'm a person who's listening a lot right now because you know, I am building in Costa Rica in one of these communities with representatives from every part of the world, from many parts of the world, but largely English speaking. Struggling to learn Spanish, you know, looking only to be building with local builders. And I recognize this is it's a big huge issue, and it's on every side too, because there's a perspective that people like me are coming in. We have a lot of money. Let's charge a lot of money. You know, like there's a whole other angle of it, which is quite uncomfortable. And yet, my experience with the Tico people that I've been able to work with and befriend, I just love the culture. So what helps me to really feel that I'm not colonizing, or I'm not, you know, sort of a bad person for coming in, it has to do with really reflecting in a bigger scale about land ownership and how, you know, this is civilization. I mean, since the beginning of time, people have migrated from one place to another. Cultures have integrated and absorbed over time, and it takes time and patience, and it's incremental, and it's not something that you can just like expect immediately, you know, well, I'm going to come in here with my culture and my whatever other countries' cultures in my community, and it's automatically going to be accepted, or vice versa. I think that it's one of those things where as you do things together, as you treat each other as neighbors, as you do some of these things that you talk about, buying locally and, you know, and really learning from each other, that's, and keep the conversation going as you're doing. Thank you very much. That's how it will happen. And it's not something that you just can like, oh, well, let's build bridges. I mean, yes, but not exactly that.
Thanks for your share. Yeah, I think if I was going to respond to that, I would say that there is there, it is good to not be over presumptuous as to what we can accomplish in a certain period of time by expecting the outcome of our bridge building. However, engaging in it with an intention of living is something that we can immediately and repeatedly do. So I would like to follow up on Santi's invitation. Stephanie, do you have anything that you could share with us?
Yes, I can share. I don't know if you're gonna hear me well. I'm in a restaurant. Yes, it's okay.
Yes, yes.
We hear you fine.
Okay, good. I really love this conversation. I'm really happy to be here. I don't know if I'm gonna make it until the end, but all the subject that we discussed is really related to the question I have right now. I'm in Nicaragua since a bit more than 3 months and a half. I'm living in Ometepe, in Inanita. I don't know if you know this place, probably. And a lot of people are buying some land in the island. And I looked also from some of them, maybe for the future, to live there. And I was wondering what I want to bring at this place. Because I can just arrive and build my community, and like someone said, I know, I think this was John, just like offer yoga class for everyone. I can do this, but also I would like to be in the community, like to be friends with them. Exactly the same if I'm living in Canada. I just, like, for me, it's a little bit like the same. I think Daniela, she shares something like, it's not about me being going to forget myself and just go into the culture of Nicaraguayan people, or them to forget about their culture and be like in my culture. It's more like co-creating something together, like what we can bring to each other. Like we have all nice habits to share, and we can learn from each other. So for me, it's more about that. I don't want to forget about all my project and everything that I love to be in their culture. And they don't want to do the same also. They want to continue their own life. So it's more like how we can increase our life together. I don't know if I'm clear. My English maybe not super good. But yes, it's more like how to co-create together. So it's like I have some knowledge about whatever the subject, permaculture, yoga, I don't know, architecture, whatever. I can teach them my knowledge, and they can teach me like what they know about how to cultivate the land, whatever, how to clean the rice. I did that with a woman. Like it's like their normal life. I don't know a lot about that, but they can teach me how they do it. I know that they build their own bricks for the walls, and so it's super impressive. Like they do it like with the soil and with fire, and they make bricks. It's super interesting. So I think like we can learn from our skills. Yes, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely skill sharing is great. And I guess that's what comes up for me a lot in these conversations. So much of us want to teach what we have to offer, and that becomes much better received when we show interest in what they have to offer, the person of another culture. Yeah,
I think they have a lot to offer. Like it's so different than in Canada, and I think we really can share, like in both sides. It's not only like me, I can share something. No, of course, like they have a lot of things to share. It's not because I'm coming from Canada that I have more things to share. It's just different. It's really different. Both are valuable.
Thank you, Stephanie. Marta, would you like to share anything?
I can share something. I would say, gracias, Santi. Me caes bien. But I don't think I have much to add. I really resonated with the things Susanna brought about the language and John Early about the different ways that they've tried to integrate that haven't worked and learned. And, you know, what Santi said about like, go do what people are doing. So I would just like underline all of those things. And yeah, the other topics that we didn't touch on are kind of like gentrification. And I'm so bothered by the, like how the river, because when I spent time in Costa Rica, I'm not there now. The culture around the river is so changed by how the foreigners use the land around the river. I imagine most people here have heard of that because like Roberto said, we're preaching to the choir. But I just want to like name that, like people being naked in the river and then a family gathering place is no longer a welcoming environment. So I think I don't have things in the like realm of solutions except what's already been said, but I will point those out, and that's it. Here to listen and learn and have faith that we can do better. Maybe one thing is to think of this group and other people like interested in this conversation as maybe ambassadors, you know, like we can represent a more respectful trying to integrate, or like not integrate as like erase anything, but show the respect that's due when you're entering something that already exists. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
I have a couple of comments. I tried to be very punctual, but I've joined a little bit late because my battery ran out of charge. I am based in London and I'm looking for a big impactful project, because back in the day, the British Empire was an empire and there was a plan to build a railway from Cape Town to Cairo, because back in the day, there was not just a railway, but also the telegraph line. So the British Empire can have north-south in Africa. And it was possible 100 years ago, but the World War II came, the collapse of the British Empire, and this big plan of the railway was never accomplished. And now I'm facing a dilemma about neo-colonialism, because I see this as a reparations, as an important infrastructure project. And I'm trying to navigate this very difficult reality, how to connect with local people. And yes, I will catch up with the recording, and I just want to plant this seed of an idea to revisit a major infrastructure project. UK was the first country to industrialize, to have industrial revolution. Now can lead the climate revolution. So I'm actually hoping that, yeah, it is possible, and big infrastructure project in Africa, employing loads of people and serving infrastructure. Thank you.
So to be clear, are you saying that you have a particular project that you're proposing and looking for support with?
Correct. There is one very specific project in Africa, railway from Cape Town, South Africa to Cairo, Egypt, 6,000 miles, 10,000 kilometers. A majority of this part is already built in by the British Empire 100 years ago. It was completely feasible, possible, economical, beneficial, you name it, 100 years ago. But the World War II, collapse of the British Empire, and this big infrastructure project was never completed. And now it can help with distribution food for all the starving people because of climate change, El Nino, extreme weather events, failing harvests. Many people will suffer and many people will die, but at least we can save the infants. There's a fancy medical term called infant stunting. When a child doesn't receive enough nutrients, it is just smaller and more vulnerable for the rest of their lives. There is not enough food right now because of the climate, but at least we can help the infants and we can build the infrastructure so that next year we'll have a distribution network to help with this World Food Program. This is just, yeah, very specific project, and I'm just asking for help. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, did you have your hand up a moment ago?
Yes, it was just because I didn't remind exactly the question at the beginning of the discussion, but it made me think that every project we build, whatever the country, even if it's in my country, I have the choice to make my own project and like whatever the community around me is, like I just do the project for myself, like I can open a yoga retreat center, whatever. But I can also choose to involve the community. So it's not because I'm outside of my country that I can do like something different. I can do exactly the same in Canada. I can involve like the farmers around my project, like the children, the older people, whatever. I can do exactly the same. So for me, it's not super different. Like the culture is different, but like all the discussion, and if I want to help the community around me, it's gonna be the same. I have to involve them in the conversation. I have to be aware of their needs. Yeah, so it's just like something that I thought about, but it's quite similar. Like the culture is different, but like you cannot speak for other people, so you have to involve them in the conversation since the beginning of your project. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Oh, it looks like we got somebody else joining us here. Oh, Fish, you have your hand up. Come on in.
Hi, y'all. Fish here, calling in from Southern California, originally by way of New York. Currently sitting on beautiful occupied Chumash land, and want to just first give gratitude and thank you for facilitating this conversation. Jason, thank you for holding this, and Rondel for helping hold this conversation. This is really important. I feel a lot more excited and open about participating in local culture in Costa Rica, where I'm making a home. And I also want to just reflect that it's been a really sad and heartbreaking process to witness the impact of community building. I'm going to throw that in air quotes, community building, and how it can be harmful to existing communities. And it's something that I've been a witness to here on my own homeland, and then in addition now in Costa Rica as well. And I have a lot of curiosity and excitement and creativity brewing around the possibility of right relationships and doing good. So this conversation feels like an incredible step in the right direction. So thank you for holding this. I hear a word that's used often a lot, especially in progressive communities, is the word integration. And I think it's a beautiful word with a beautiful intention, and it's a necessary part of a process, but I don't think it's the first part of a process. And I think the thing I'll offer into this space, I don't want to offer too much because I'm really here to listen, is that integration is a follow-up to listening, to acknowledgement, to learning. And then once we've listened, once we've acknowledged and learned, then we integrate, then we learn what we take away from the experience, we learn what we can benefit from, and we will learn how we can take those parts, our parts and the parts of those who've shared, and how they can live together. And that's why I think integration gets to really find its value. But thank you. Thank you for the space to speak.
Thanks, Fish. That was a great reflection. Anybody else want to jump on here? Okay. I can use the space here to stimulate some more ideas based on my previous investigations. Actually, let's see, I could go through. Yeah, I'm gonna do some celebration here and talk about things that are already being done by some of these projects as examples. So I mentioned the Employment Association to rotate employees. Someone else, Sail Cargo Inc. They created a tree planting program, and they created a nonprofit organization, a foundation, and that creates more jobs, and they pay fair wages they have it all dialed into their fundraising, that they're not just paying the cheapest wages to do these reforestation projects, but they're paying living wages for here in Costa Rica. They do tours for their shipyard where they're building this giant ship. I think if you're interested in this zero carbon ship that they're building, you can look at Links Gimon. I think it's like episode 10 or something like that. But they do tours of their shipyard where they're hand building this ship with a multicultural crew. But they offer those for pay, but then they give those same tours to schools and locals for free. So they've got a program they're making money with, and they just straight up offer the same program in Spanish for locals and for schools for free. And that's something they bring into this. One friend, Justin Dolan, was talking about, he brought in foster kids. Several of them helped with school projects. This was one of our first cultural integration pieces that we did at my farm. We were just like, oh, the school's got something going on. Like, oh yeah, of course, we're going to send some of our volunteers to go help out for a few days. Taking the time to listen to needs. Offered to fix the local water system. You know, whether it's whatever the public utility is that is commonly used by even if you're not tapped into it, if it's a common utility and you have the opportunity to contribute to its improvement, something as fundamental as water, you're like, oh, the town has a crappy water system. It's a good thing I have a spring. No, let's see if there's something you can do to help the water system, whether you're using it or not. Talked about helping to improve the waterways, just getting out there with a shovel, donating food to community events. Your communities are often doing fundraisers and donating food or tools or something they can raffle. All these things go a long way. That's how they make those fundraisers work. So when you find out that there's a fundraiser, your neighbors might not be, they might be too humble to ask you for a donation, but just hearing that it's happening, you can assume that they need donations. Just like, oh, and you got a farm, you've got a harvest of food you're not eating. Like, just send it down to the fundraiser. They'll find some way to make it beneficial to the cause. Somebody else brought in a local high school teacher to teach English in the local school. Like, oh, a school doesn't have an English teacher. I could probably find an English teacher that would come in for a season and teach the kids. That was easy. And talking about like offering things that aren't really culturally normative, somebody else is offering belly dancing classes in their pueblo and people are coming. So don't judge what you think that people will enjoy, but the difference is they hold those belly dancing classes at the local salon comunal, like so they're, and that's something that goes along with the events that people want to hold. It's something that I realized. I just held an entrepreneurs roundtable here in the village, and I offered two, one in English and one in Spanish, and even though I was renting the space, because it was a nice space, nice community center, I had a nice full circle of foreigners come to that one, but the one in Spanish, I didn't get a turnout. And I was only asking for 3,000 colones to show up to this thing. But even that, was an obstacle for many of the foreigners, and the place I held it, they just felt like that's a foreigner's place. That isn't our place. We already have a culture. We already have a place. So now this next one, I'm talking to the organizers of the where they hold the association meetings, just be like, can I hold an entrepreneurs roundtable right here in the local salon? And I can. And they will be much more likely to come. And I don't have to put up a bilingual chat invitation in the groups that I'm connected with. The association now shares that message, that post in their own chats. And I'm looking, it's going out next week. I'm looking forward to see what the difference in turnout is of holding it in a place that they're comfortable and having the invitation be sent out by their own people. And this is something I might not get to in this whole call here, but something further down in my notes that I'll bring up is the suggestion to go to the priest. Many of these areas are very church-based. And if you have something genuinely good to share, you could go to the person of influence, whether it's the priest or the head of the Association of Development or whatever it is. Find someone who has a point of influence already and talk to them about it. First, you'll get ideas for how to improve your presentation of what you're offering in a way that'll be better received. And then you can get them to invite people. And that can improve the turnout of who shows up to your events. Just taking your employees out fishing. You know, that's what they like to do. They like to go fishing, find out, well, is there something that they're down with? And then just take them to go do that together, right? That's just an easy way to be like, let's go hang out. Let's go fishing. Another leader says he just goes to people's homes for coffee, shows up to the football games, he goes to the bingo games. Another one, they do a sushi night. We used to do this at my place. We used to just have a dinner for whatever neighbors would come. And we put it out there potluck style, but we would have one of our neighbors that we would pay to make a bunch of local food, just to like make sure that there was plenty and to make sure that it was what they're accustomed to. But invite a fun eat together night, whether it's a potluck or you provide the food. That's a really great way to bring people into your program too. If you got a big program that's weird to people from the outside and they don't get it, what you're doing, and they're like, oh, that's a place we don't go, then just make more nights that are all about inviting the neighbors over. If you do something unique and it has a cost to it that you can't quite offer for free to everybody, but maybe a scholarship, design a scholarship into the price so that a certain percentage of all the ticket sales are going to pay for a local person to come attend it for free. Even if you don't have translation, you can, if you like, we did this for every one of our permaculture design courses we taught at my farm. We always had, for every 5 paid attendances, we had a scholarship for one person. And that went to a bilingual person, but it just made it more accessible for everybody, for the people that wanted to come, but couldn't afford it. We worked that into the price. Okay, I'll just say one more piece. I want to list off some of the things that Fuerza de Amor is doing, and then Santi, I'll bring you back into the conversation here. So Fuerza de Amor, among the many things, some of the things that I noted down from my conversation with Elaine, He spent 3 years listening more than anything. He went to homes. They have a whole campaign, Brave Earth. They had a whole committee of members that were bilingual that made a commitment to make sure they knocked on every door in their entire village over the course of some months. They didn't, try to squeeze it all in a week. And that's huge. They just decided we're going to make a local foundation that's going to benefit the locals, and we're not going to do anything until we talk to everybody. It's powerful. Also, they talked to students, and they collected the dreams of 20 plus high school students. Tell me your dreams. That's it. They just went into the school and said, tell us your dreams, high schoolers. We want to know. They created a community space called Musilio that has internet. It's a hangout space with a little bit of a library in the Pueblo that has internet. Internet's for the Pueblo, it's not a huge expense, especially when you get cooperation from someone who has a building in the internet in the Pueblo to host it. And it's not even in their compound. It's not on their property. It's in the village. They found somebody with a house that they could donate to a community center, and then they invested into making it an awesome community center, which with paying the internet bill and calling out for some books to be delivered. They created a leaderboard with tasks that needed to be done in the village, and they have kids in the school that can sign up to help with these projects, and then they get points, and then they get, if you volunteer 3 times in a month, you qualify for ambassador training. And after you do the training, you get a patch to be recognized as a community leader. This is part of Fuerza de Amor's program, and it's very well received, by the way, because they designed it with the people in the Pueblo are like, yeah, that we would be into that. Yeah, that's the notes I had for Fuerza de Amor. So with that being said, before I go into any other topics of information I've gathered, Santi, what would you like to share?
No, I think this one that you were sharing was nice because I didn't know a lot of these ones, even though I've worked with them and we've had them at the festival where they share their presentations. So thank you for gathering that information and all the other points too. Let me try to remember if what I was gonna say earlier. I might need to gather my thoughts because I was just really excited about this one. So let me think again. I'll come back.
No problem. Okay, Rondel, are you getting a link for Fuerza de Amor, please?
I'm gonna look for it. Yeah, and
okay. I think it's just fuerzadeamor.org, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, they're located in around the Arenal area in Northern Zone. And Fish was just asking if we will have a space for questions, dedicated to questions, or maybe we should just throw the questions when we have them.
We are open. Yeah, just bring them, rifle them off. There's a 3-hour conversation. We're 2.5 into it. We got a half hour left or 40 minutes left. Just let's roll. It's an open conversation. What you got, Fish? You can unmute yourself.
That's right. Yeah, Fish, you could voice it. That'll be great.
Great. Thanks, Al. My thought and question was, what are our thoughts around the original instances of colonization? For example, like missionary Christianity's impact on the indigenous peoples in these lands, how that has like changed values and practices and beliefs, has in fact developed a very conservative culture as a result of pre-existing colonizing behavior, and how does that affect our efforts to decolonize, especially on this sort of current front?
Well, anyone who has something to add to that, please raise your hand and we'll get you on the mic. I do not have too many thoughts on that. I did recently talk with our friend Cyril, who is very connected with the indigenous community here in this region, communities, I should say. And his feeling was that actually, from his perspective, this is just one person's perspective on the question, that he didn't necessarily feel like it's a huge problem for the present day indigenous, that at least here in Costa Rica, his perspective, and I haven't been to the areas yet to see for myself what life is like there. But he said that they have their needs met. They have their community, they have their land, they have what they need. They're not, my feeling is that they're not trying to be a tourist destination. They're not trying to bring in a bunch of outside influence to save them or do anything else. They want to preserve what they have. They reach out when they want. They have ambassadors like Cyril and others that bring them out to other events to share what they have to offer. I'm not personally, I don't even know what's the word. There's a word that's common in the movement about paying back the present generations for the past ills of our forefathers, reparations. I have limited enthusiasm for that. In some cases, it can be done in a way that's regenerative, but in most cases, that money doesn't, or resources don't generally get focused into regenerative outcomes. They just feed the consumerisms that has found its way into the present generation. So it's actually money that's just going back into the consumerism beast rather than really repairing culture. So that's my thought on it. I'm sure there's plenty more.
Yeah, I guess to rephrase per Santi's request is, how does the efforts to decolonize culture, broad scope, how is that impacted by existing local cultures? We could call them sort of the modern indigenous peoples who are of that land but have been recultured by previous mission efforts, previous colonizing efforts. And so when someone who's not from that country comes to connect, we're connecting with an existing colonized culture. And do we have thoughts on how that has affected our efforts?
So as I understand the question, it's, let's say foreigners are coming and they're trying to not be colonizers, but there's already a colonizer force, which in some cases can be religion. And how could we maybe go towards what, like the root, like what was this place originally, maybe something like that. And I think just creating discussion groups or promoting dynamics that get people to think and analyze things, not, for example, instead of saying, don't you, I'm not saying that you said this, I'm just giving examples. Instead of saying, don't you think religion is like a colonizing force? Asking, what forces do you think have influenced this town's behavior that might have prevented the local culture from expressing fully? So more like open questions instead of that questions that direct to an answer. And I think asking these questions when we're working with locals, just chapeando, or maybe just going in the car, just opening these questions for them to think about them and just have a conversation around it. And at the same time, questioning ourselves in the way we think that things are. For me, one of the most mind-blowing things is I was working with my partner one day and she pointed at me she's like, look at those flowers. Those are so nice. I was looking at the mountains. And I'm like, how can she see the flowers from here? I guess it's a tree. And after some discussion, it turns out that the flowers were just in front of us. And I was wondering, how come if the flowers are here in front, she was pointing to the background? And I noticed, and I never thought of this, but not everyone points the same way. And I point with my finger, and she points, creating a line with her eye to the finger to the thing, which I never thought about. So it's not just only how other people's or other tendencies colonized or brought ideas, but also in those conversations, how can we question ourselves and our beliefs and the way we do things? So it's not us just making them think, but thinking together about new ways of thinking.
Great point, Santi. Fish, do you have any response to any of that you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's really a wonderful reflection, because it's currently what I've been doing, of having conversations, keeping it very open and broad. And even the reason of bringing the question around missionary Christianity specifically was because that was something that was brought up in some of the conversations I was having with local indigenous families, specifically in Mexico, as well as Costa Rica. And so I heard that, and I thought, wow, what an interesting question, because it's something that none of us in our conversation, as we were having it multiple times, really had an answer. And I thought, wonder what it would sound like to bring it into this space and ask. So thank you.
And something that I just remembered, it's if you're in a place where there's a lot of religion and they're trying to bring you in, pull you in, what I do is like, I tell them, I do have time, but can you help me make compost? And because they're always open and helpful, many times I've found myself turning compost or harvesting stuff around the farm with them following me, hopefully helping and like engaging also. And I think that has helped me see some of their viewpoints and has helped them see mine. And I would like now to kind of direct this question also and hear Susana's perspective. Susana, si vos habéis tenido como situaciones relacionadas a la religión y cómo hay ciertas influencias, ¿verdad? A veces muy fuertes, como has estado en varios países. ¿Cómo pensás que podemos integrar, tal vez agarrar lo bueno de estas religiones, lo que puede servirnos para una mejor sociedad, respetar otra parte, pero también influir de forma que traigamos tal vez principios, bueno, que tal vez no sean los mejores para todos, pero quiero decir, de más inclusión, de más de bienestar? Y no sé cómo has visto esto en diferentes países.
¿Me escuchas?
Sí.
Ah, mirá, lamentablemente me he perdido gran parte porque no sé qué pasa, no me está funcionando el headphones. Pero mira, con relación a la religión, tocaste un punto clave, porque a mí me ha costado mucho en lo personal. Yo vengo de un país, Uruguay es un país que tiene separada la religión del Estado. Yo creo que estoy casi segura que es el único estado de América Latina que tiene la separación de religión y Estado. Entonces, o sea, nuestro Estado es laico, no es un Estado confesional como es Costa Rica, que la confesión del Estado de Costa Rica es la religión católica. Entonces, para mí ha sido en particular algo un poco difícil de asumir, porque en mi país jamás vas a ver que en un acto público se haga alusión a Dios o se rece o algo como se hace acá. Entonces, a mí personalmente me ha chocado un poco, porque si bien yo respeto todas las religiones, soy de familia de origen católico, pero sigo filosofía budista, pero soy totalmente laica. Entonces, el tema de la religión es un tema espinoso, porque yo he encontrado acá en Costa Rica un poco difícil, más allá de que es un estado católico confesional, hay otra gente que practica la religión. Y el tema de la religión, acá se habla mucho de religión. La gente te habla de religión. En una charla espontánea estás en una parada de bus y por ahí a los 3 minutos ya te salen hablando de Dios con mucho respeto, ¿verdad? Cosa que yo no estoy acostumbrada en absoluto. Entonces, yo creo que eso influye mucho el tema de la religión y yo no sería partidaria, honestamente, de incluirla en ningún puente, ¿me entiendes? Porque más bien que separa más que une, honestamente. No solo en Costa Rica, creo que a nivel mundial la religión separa más que une. Yo respeto la libertad de expresión en la religión, pero trato de no entrar en discusiones religiosas, ¿verdad? Yo creo que puede llegar a separar más que unir, honestamente. Es la experiencia que veo a nivel mundial y veo que acá en Costa Rica a veces la religión pesa mucho en las decisiones de las personas. Digo, no quiero entrar en conceptos personales para no ofender a nadie, pero honestamente en eso creo que voy a ser radical, en mi opinión. Yo dejaría la religión afuera, realmente. No creo que tienda puentes, te soy franca. Si bien encuentro que puede haber mucha gente de muy buena voluntad, eso no quita, ¿viste? En la religión católica, en la religión evangélica, por supuesto, pero yo lo excluiría. Es mi opinión muy personal de una persona que creció en un estado laico, ¿viste? Ya te digo, soy de familia de origen católico, ¿no? Yo ahora no profeso la confesión católica, pero mi opinión es que la religión está separando más de lo que está uniendo. Otra cosa es la espiritualidad, ¿ah? Pero eso es una opinión muy personal mía. Gracias por haberme dado la oportunidad de opinar.
Bueno, gracias. Yes, I think that I agree with you, Susanna. It's a topic that can be sometimes better left to the side. There's so much more that we can connect on rather than worrying about things where it might bring separation.
Yeah.
Rundle, you've had your hand up. Would you like to jump in? You're muted, Rundle.
Sí, claro. Sí, tomando la pregunta que hace Fish también, si le entiendo, y también para traer un poco de contexto, que tal vez es diferente en Costa Rica a otros países. Y me parece curioso también la situación acá. Yo creo que aquí lo que exponía Fish es como que ya ha habido una colonización previa, eso es muy cierto. Es diferente a otros países, me parece, donde aquí tal vez fue muy efectiva, donde se integró parte de la sociedad, de la civilización, se integraron, ¿verdad? Con la cultura que viene de la colonización del catolicismo, de la religión, creó esta cultura en Costa Rica, la cual fue muy efectiva en amasar a casi toda toda la civilización tica, donde todos tenemos descendencia española e indígena de alguna forma, y los que se conservaron, digamos, indígenas puros, es una minoría que están muy bien aislados en pequeñas partes del país. Entonces, sí es una realidad para ellos cómo ellos tratan de subsistir en el pequeño pedazo de tierra que se les ha dado, donde ellos tienen su propia lucha para defender sus derechos, para tener su autonomía. Es una lucha que es constante y no es visible para todos los ticos, para todos los costarricenses, no nos damos cuenta. Es notoria cuando vives muy cerca de estos poblados indígenas. Aquí, inclusive, bueno, aquí en el sur de Pérez Celedón, hay unos pueblos indígenas con los cuales yo no he interactuado lo suficiente y siempre me quedo de ganas de ir a conocerles más, a interactuar con ellos, a entender cuáles son los problemas que ellos enfrentan. Aquí donde yo vivo solo puedo reconocer como a una persona que sé que es aquí de vecino, que es de descendencia boruca, y hasta ahí es la interacción que tengo con el pueblo Boruca, y ellos están ahí con su propia situación. Ellos tienen su forma también de mantener viva su cultura, de atraer gente a que les conozcan, pero es una situación importante, cómo los ticos invisibilizamos esto o no estamos conscientes de esto porque fuimos muy bien colonizados, tal vez, o se nos homogenizó mucho la cultura y existe esta separación y la religión hizo eso también, ¿verdad? Separar a los que creen, a los que se adaptaron bien a esta religión católica, a esta forma de creencia, y los que creen en estas otras formas, ¿verdad? Son los salvajes, los que adoran a la naturaleza, ¿verdad? Entonces, ahora estamos aprendiendo más y adoptando más de estas cosas de la cultura indígena. Y tengo amigos que sí hacen, y amigas que hacen un trabajo muy importante y están muy involucrados, pero no vas a verlo en todas partes. En otros países se siente más, es densa la cultura indígena, está en más partes. Aún así tienen sus problemas sociales y económicos porque la economía no les favorece, pero quería traer esto como parte del contexto en el que estamos, para que conozcamos más, donde yo también tengo que aprender más.
Thank you, Randall. All right. Cool. There's another topic that came up in my conversations with some friends, mostly my Tico friends that I talk to, about events. And I really love what Santi brought in at the beginning of our conversation about how it's maybe instead of thinking about how can we create events or create ways to bring, the other culture into our events, that we take time to enter their events. So when I asked the same question, not really thinking of having thought of the importance of making that first step and wanting perspective. Like, what do you think? What are ways that we can create events that people be interested in coming? Like I said, I had that problem with the Entrepreneurs Roundtable, that people didn't come. And I was like, oh, I want to help the local people at the farmers market, like, reach more people and improve their business. They want more money. They want this thing, and they can support each other. And from my conversations of that, I came to the idea of holding it at a place they feel more comfortable. Right. So I'm going to read some of the notes that I took during that part of my conversation. For one friend said that it's also difficult for the alternative Ticos here to invite their neighbors to their events. So it's not just a foreigner local issue. It really is the cultural gap isn't about nationality so much, or it only. So ideas came up: make it as familiar as possible. Make the space as familiar as possible. The less political or religious you can make your event, the better chances you're going to be of having it go well. present it in a way that's as less hippie as possible. Make it neutral, drug-free, clean clothes, or odor-free, right? These are some really important points here that you want to invite your neighbors in. You can't have a bunch of stinky people smoking drugs and being half naked and have them end up being comfortable. Okay, if that's really your purpose of your event, if that's an intention of your event, then make sure people coming to the event honor that intention and come ready to respect. I was at an event last night, beautiful event. It was just a simple full moon gathering, and there was a potluck, and it was presented in both languages, and everything was translated that was presented. It was a dance party with a music circle, and it was at a local spot. It was mostly really well done. However, they started the dance party late, and they started at a time where they finally had people there, and half the people there were Ticos. It was perfect. And they started with a meditation before the dance party. Now, I'm all about dropping in. I took 30 seconds to do that before we started this call. However, making everybody sit down for 15 minutes before getting into your event that they all showed up for and guiding them through some meditation, even if it's bilingual, might not be sensitive to the theme that people showed up for. Okay, especially at the hour they showed up and that was all happening. So those are some things about, keeping it less hippie as possible, so that it's if you do get them there, that they're so comfortable they don't leave right away and they come back for the next one. Making space for kids, big deal. A lot of these foreigner parties are, even the foreigners in this area don't come to tons of these fun events because there's really nothing to accommodate the kids. And when kids are accommodated for, you often see a much better turnout. And that'll go the same with in this case. Another piece, ask them for what they want and then give them what they need while doing the former, right? So that's another way, is to, find out what they want, present an event the way that it's being invited and asked for. And if you're going to offer something extra, plant some seeds of influence, do it while following through on the initial invitation. One comment came up saying that their needs are often fairly cosmetic. The progressive culture has all of these like transcendental concepts they want to bring into their thing, like meditation to a dance party. Okay. And keep in mind that like they may not be showing up for the same transcendental conversation, at least get it going with the dance party and then maybe take a little interlude to do something a little different and flow back into the superficial part of it, of dancing, right? As one example, just understanding their customs and where they're coming from, what life is like for them if you want to invite them in. So you can design around that. A comment came in that people who understand the free trade agreements, they understand capitalism well. And there are people that you can get together to talk about regenerative enterprises. So it's just a little seed that was planted there. Working with the youth is an excellent way. Excellent. There's less inhibitions there. There's more enthusiasm, and there might even be some more bilingualism. But offer some things for the high school kids. Get them involved in your events. Plan events around that. That you will. They need stuff to do. Those are the people in need. People working the farms don't necessarily need your party as much as their kids do, right? So that was a really great piece that got dropped on me. Rural communities are centered around these churches. I mentioned that later. to transcend the limiting belief that's keeping them from connecting, talk to the priest or other leader and ask them how to reach the people for this event that you think everybody would find ethical and respectful. He may be willing to share the invitation on your behalf. Ecstatic dance, however, could seem outside of their values and may not be the best thing to lead with. And with that, talk to influential people behind the influential organizations like the Asociación de Desarrollo and ask what they would like to see and try to create an event around their preferences as your first intentions. They're going to be your early adopters and your key influencers. Like Santi said in the beginning, show up to the events they're already holding. And the one actual idea for an actual event that came through that this Tico friend was already doing is that their seat exchanges are usually very well attended. So that was that topic I wanted to share with you. There was some really great pieces of wisdom that dropped in. In the course of it, Santi, you'd thrown up your hand. Would you like to chime in again? Or anyone else for that matter? On that topic of how to make things more comfortable and inviting?
I think, yeah, something that actually Stephanie was just putting in the chat was the bar for scholarships. And for me, something that can help, you can have scholarship in your own events, but if you see local groups organizing similar things to what you're doing or things that you would support if you had the knowledge or the space or whatever, it's just reaching out to them and be like, hey, I saw you're creating this permaculture course for Costa Ricans. I would like to help with scholarships. And that way, I'm sure, or I would like to just go help and help make the food or help organize the space, as I said before. But that way you can, you're still promoting the things you believe in through locals and through the things that, the activities that they're already organizing. The other thing is, as you mentioned, not just with youth, but with kids, if you see these events and you can help provide a person that can play with kids, so people with kids can participate and be focused on the event without having to worry about their kids, or just that they cannot come because they have no one to take care of them. So you can help provide that, or you can be the one, if you like kids, that those spaces are more accessible, especially for mothers, that it's what I see in general are mostly taking care of kids, and that I think they're also in many ways really open to receiving this. And I've heard from many that they would really like to participate, they just can't do it with kids.
Great point. Yep. Stephanie, you wrote some things here in the chat. Would you like to just share them personally off the mic? Not everybody seeing the replay is going to read the chat.
Okay. Yeah, I said that I'm more here to listen. I'm shy most of the time to share in a group. And English is not my first language, so it makes things like a bit more difficult for me. But yeah, Santi, he brought what I said a little bit. Okay, now I think I'm gonna read it or something. I have like a few ideas to help. I don't know, I'm shy to do this. Okay, I like in Canada, like we have different ways of earning money to help other people. So you can have the option when you buy a service, you can have the option to pay more, and this money go on the side to fill a pot who's going to be used for whatever the community needs. So it can be to plant street, can be to offer a scholarship to one kid, to build a road or whatever. Or you can have like percentage who is automatically taken from the price of the activity you offer. For example, a yoga retreat, like it can be like, I don't know, 1%, 2%, 5%, whatever. And this money is automatically put on the side for the same reason. Or you can also have some sliding scale for the person who are interested to participate in your activities. So it can be for the locals or the travelers, whatever, because like no one have it's not everyone who have the same budget. So you can have like a sliding scale, like for your, I don't know, your yoga classes, or if you offer like classes on whatever, menstruation cycle and things like that, whatever the subject. So everyone can participate, or just it can be free also, like for the local people, like they can pay on a different level. So if they can bring some food, they can be an exchange. Like there's a lot of options without the money to share what you offer. Because for me, I feel it's a little bit weird to forget about my project and what I want, not to make them uncomfortable. Like if I want to do an ecstatic dance or swim naked at the pool that I have in my community, like if it's on my land, I will want to do it like this. And if they are interested to discover that, like they are welcome. But if it's on my propriety, I would like to be free to share with them what I want to. But if I'm outside of my land in the community, of course, I'm gonna like I don't know how to say that. Like I'm gonna do what they are used to do. Yeah. That's it. Maybe it's better if you read just what I wrote in the chat. But yeah.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing. All right, guys, we've got about 5 minutes left to this call. I think I'm going to put the rest of my list down. I've got various things I intend to do with all of these wonderful ideas that I've been collecting over the last couple of months of doing this work, and that you all have shared in this conversation. Wow, thank you so much for contributing. Thanks for staying the whole time. That's really meaningful to me to see those of you that have really been with this the whole time. I know it's a long time to stay on a call on a Sunday afternoon, but I see you and appreciate being seen by you for calling this together. So thank you for your support and just being here, let alone all the wonderful ideas that you've brought to the table. I would like to, well, I'm certainly going to continue this conversation and work in the coming weeks and months and hopefully years. Like I said, I've started going to the local meetings myself. I am finding my way, inviting myself into some other circles. There's a regional organization that's uniting some of the pueblos here, and I'm going to talk to them soon and see what we could do together. But these, all of the notes that I've been compiling, I'm going to be putting them into probably some kind of book format, and probably some shorter list formats as well. Everyone who's joined this call will have access to them. However, if you did not choose to be on my mailing list for the podcast, I will be sharing, once I get this raw replay up on YouTube as it is without the translations, that'll be up. Everybody who signed up for the call will get that. However, to get access to other things, the lists I make and the books, and hear about other updates of what I'm doing in this movement, I'm not going to email you, because if you said no, I don't want updates. So
Excuse me, quick question about
Yes.
emails, books, maybe a Telegram signal or WhatsApp, something for us to collaborate together, because you are putting such a great job with your wisdom, with organizations, but leave some hard work for the community, because we've spent some time here connecting, bouncing ideas. I personally definitely want to remain connected. And I think that WhatsApp is probably the simplest way.
I love that suggestion. It was one of the next notes I was going to make. I'm making a Telegram group. Telegram is more functional because you can set it so that previous posts are viewable. WhatsApp, you can't do that. So I will be emailing with the replays of this access to a Telegram group that we can continue this conversation in. And if that group breaks out into various subgroups of like project organization or something like that, then the group can be broken into additional subfolders and we can organize the conversation that way. So yes, thank you. I will have a Telegram group that I will be inviting you to in the follow-up email to this call. You bet. And if you want, I guess also that, yeah, that would be another place, if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, that I can drop specific notes around resources that I create for this. Let's see, make sure I have any other notes I was going to finish with. I may hold another conversation like this. The attendance dropped off over time, so I think might choose to make shorter conversations. Maybe we'll make the next one for 2 hours. I'm imagining about a month from now, but I also want to get more feedback. So I will be sending out a survey as well, like a little feedback form. I won't make it very big, but I do have some specific questions to know what you would like in future pieces. And so please, if you could take some time to help me formulate this group conversation better going forward, click the button that I send to fill out that survey. That'll be very helpful. And for anyone who's watching this as a replay, in the video description, I will have all of these links as well. So you can join the Telegram chat, you can join my email list, and you can respond to the survey. So I would love to hear your thoughts, even if you're watching this on the replay, as to how we can make this more inclusive for you in the future. And I guess the last piece I'll share for anyone on this call or watching a replay is I'm organizing a mastermind program for people that want to build bridges where they are and they want to create outreach programs or whatever other initiatives in their village, that if you would like to be part of a group of people that are meeting regularly, supporting each other directly with their initiatives, then contact me. There will be an invitation in the email and in the Telegram chat. And at the same time, if just right now after this call, you want to reach out to me, you can send an email to jason@regenerationnationcr.com and just let me know if you're interested in being in a group like that and would like the support of others in getting your project off the ground, or if you just want to be part of getting other people's projects off the ground. So that's what I got for you. Thank you so much for attending, for being present. Until next time.
That's it. That was the call. That's what happened this time. I will be doing more calls like this. I think we're going to narrow the next one down to 2 hours. When we had our first call, 2 hours didn't seem like it was enough, but it was a bunch of people in a room together. It's a little different when you're sitting together than on a Zoom call. But thank you so much for making it this far into the video to the end. And if you like this kind of thing, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the little alerts button so you get notifications when new things pop up. And we're going to be going deeper into this conversation. If you'd like to get more notice directly, I rattled off my email address at the end, and you can hit me up, or you can go to any of the links in the description of this video to sign up to the newsletter or any of the other fun stuff. Get on the Telegram group and join the conversation. And we'll see more of you there.